Joining us now to discuss is Dan Gunsberg. He's the founder of crypto options trading platform Hxro. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining us. So, are you near-term neutral, or is Bitcoin are you bullish on Bitcoin?
I mean, I am always pretty much long-term bullish Bitcoin and crypto in general. I think in the short run, as I have been for the last few months, I've been fairly neutral. I think kind of the biggest discussion point right now and the narrative that traders are really working from is around Bitcoin volatility, not because it's necessarily going nuclear, which is usually when it makes news, but quite to the contrary of actually how quiet and dead it is. And I think kind of generally speaking, when you think about something like an asset like Bitcoin that has low price volatility and going through a kind of a consolidation, it's somewhat often a sign of a maturing market, and you'd think, because more institutional players are in, which may be partially true, but I think it ends up that really it's the beginning of for me more of a bottoming process, and it's actually very, very constructive long term for the asset class as a whole.
Why do you think we're seeing Bitcoin volatility lower than, say, other risk-on assets out there, like stocks? We just spoke this morning about the bonds. Yeah.
Again, I think historically assets like digital assets and just assets like Bitcoin, and I've talked about this on the show before. They kind of go through this Gartner cycle style a price discovery where you get these explosive, almost moves that end up being somewhat parabolic to the upside, with these very deep pullbacks, and those pullbacks almost always culminate into a very long period of quiet range-bound trading activity. And I think a lot of speculators, who came to the industry looking kind of for those trading opportunities, they tend to show up when volatility really starts to pick up and the market actually starts going back into price discovery mode. But it often works that really only starts once the traders from the previous cycle kind of exit the room. Only then do you really start, a new cycle. And I think it kind of goes back to the digital asset space as a whole being very countercyclical from a trading investment standpoint. I think some of the macro narrative that we've spent a lot of time focusing on in recent weeks, it's not quite having the same knock-on effects as it did. And until a new narrative comes along, you really will, probably see more of this sideways trade.
All right. So how are traders positioning themselves in the options market, especially on Hxro? I'm sure you have some great data there.
Yeah, we're seeing it somewhat balanced. Not quite. I think I just read something that at least on the retail side, the put purchasing for retail in traditional equities was kind of like 3 times that of the calls, and professional traders will look at that and generally probably take the other side of that trade more often than not. So I would say that at least in the circles that I'm running in, there is a lot of vol buying. Like you can buy cheap volatility right now throughout term structure, and also some buying of general term structure, like the Bitcoin futures curve. If you even go out a year, is pretty much flat right now. Like the market's kind of expecting prices to trade somewhat similar to where they're trading today, out as far as out till next October. And we see that, and then you kind of get this opportunity because when a rally comes, the borrowing for to start taking more leverage positions actually increases, and you end up with a steepening of that curve, where further out the curve you're going to see higher Bitcoin prices into the future, and that kind of all equates back to what the borrowing market is for to borrow Bitcoin if you're trading on leverage, and as that steepens, you kind of have this high correlation of further upside. So I think we're seeing a lot more positioning, more of a market neutral but long volatility position, and then positioning for higher prices into the future.
Okay, so are options premiums rising or falling these days, and what does that say about sentiment?
I mean, with volatility, which is usually generally the greatest input, they're getting pretty historically cheap. So I would tend to think that, and just through my 25 to 30, almost 30 years of trading experience, that you see opportunities like this. They don't come along too often, but they often take a lot longer to play out than what you think. And so, I'm generally thinking that you're going to see kind of refreshing of these types of longer volatility positions and positioning for more upside and directionally and as well. And then, it may end up taking a little bit longer to play out than most traders think. And, you're going to see that in the marketplace with kind of a refreshing of these positions. And you're getting, what we would call in the options market, go figure, cheap optionality. And there's opportunities to kind of take positions where you can just maybe bleed out really small losses if you're wrong, but you have this asymmetric upside that when you do get a move, that move will be explosive. And Bitcoin volatility, especially into the wings, tends to be very sensitive. So once you do get a breakout or you do get a move, then those options go from being very cheap to very rich very quickly.
So what price would you say is Bitcoin's bottom, and when will we see that big breakout movement? What will be the catalyst?
Oh, I wish I had that perfect answer for you, but I'm tending to think that we have seen a bottom. If something happens to the downside, it really will probably more or less come from a somewhat of a blip, or it could be some type of fat finger in the market. But I think constructively, we've seen the bottom, or we're at very close to where we're at right now. And I do think that taking a more conservative estimate, you may see 2023 be somewhat sideways. Like there is a very high probability we can kind of go back to this Bitcoin, the structure that kind of existed in 2015, 2016. But worst case, I think you see sideways markets through 2023. I think you're going to see some opportunity for kind of near breakouts. Maybe you get up into the mid or high 20s and then kind of retrace would seem to make a lot of sense. And then as we start getting closer to U.S. presidential elections 2024, and those types of elements and inputs start coming into play, you probably see a lot more speculation around the macro again, and then from there, I think you're probably seeing another leg up.